Welcome to another exciting episode 91 of the Geek Homeworld podcast. I'm your host, Savage Techman, aka Ed, and we are talking on this episode about 10 years of the Marvel Universe. So, I hope you're a Marvel fan. If you're not, maybe you'll become one. We have 18 movies in 3 phases spread over 10 years, and Marvel has pretty much written the book and done a wonderful job of it, of having 10 years of Marvel movies. And so, hopefully, in this episode here, we're going to go through those 18 movies, and then we'll talk box office. And we already know Black Panther's at the top of it, but is it really? If you look at adjusted for inflation, Avengers still wins out. So that's from 2012. But we're going to get into all that, okay? Just a few preliminaries. If you want to follow us on Twitter, it's at Geek Homeworld. Our website is geekhomeworld.libsyn.com. And our blog, where sometimes we have some bonus content on there, is at geekhomeworld.blogspot.com. So I'm trying something new. You'll hear this audio version, if everything goes well, of episode 91 here of the podcast. You'll hear that on our regular Libsyn site, and you'll also see just the static version of it with audio in our Geek Homeworld banner there. But if you're and that'll be on YouTube, but it'll be everywhere else too, on iTunes, the podcast where we're at, also Geek Homeworld. Plus, will be some other places. And but for the first time, you'll see me on video if this works out well. If I can get it to work out well, you'll also see me on YouTube. So apologies if it doesn't work out. This is one of my first forays into video podcasting. Even though I've been podcasting for 10 years this year, I've really been very reluctant about the video portion. So if you're going to comment, please make constructive criticisms. Be kind. Be very kind, okay? I want to talk about one of my loves, and that's film. And I'm a professional sound mixer. I work in the industry. I'm very lucky. Still got a long ways to go and so many things to do, but it's been a wonderful experience so far. And so I'm always looking for work. So if you're looking for a good sound mixer, please don't let what I'm doing here on YouTube possibly affect that. I have several movies that I've sound mixed on and that I'm very proud of, and worked with so many talented folks, so many different talented people, and so very excited about that. Don't judge my video quality here if you're watching this on YouTube, if this makes it to YouTube. If not, you're going to be saying, what's happening on YouTube? I better go check out that YouTube page. And if you do, hit the subscribe button. Right now, just a little behind the scenes, I'm working with OBS, Open Broadcast Software. That's how I'm recording this. Right over here is my boom mic connected to my mixer over here that you can't see. I'm going to work on some multi-camera aspects of this so you can see a little bit of what I'm doing here. If there's a little background sound, I'm using a sound blanket here, but the way I've got my mic positioned, you may be hearing some of the fan motor off of my laptop. So I apologize if there's a little bit of noise in the background there. So all those technical difficulties are now out the way. Well, I don't know if they're out the way, but they're possibly there. And I'm a sound guy, so I'm going to listen a little bit harder than some of you might, but not to discredit you, I'm sure you will. But anyway, let's stop the rambling and let's get on to what we're really here to talk about. And that's 3 phases of Marvel movies. And after Avengers Infinity War, which at the recording of this, today's April 20th, it's 4/20, and 7 days or less, we're going to be seeing on the big screen, finally, Thanos versus the Avengers, and it's going to be incredible. As much as Black Panther was an excellent movie, let's see having Black Panther and everyone else on the screen fighting Thanos. It's just going to be so sick. It's going to be so wonderful. really am excited for that. So hopefully we're gonna see that and just totally enjoy it. But you can't know where you are, where you're going, unless you know where you've been. So we're going to do now. I'm pulling up here so I can kind of walk through it with you. But let's just start at the beginning because that's where you got to start. And we have phase one started back in 2008, ironically the same year that I started podcasting. So I feel a little affinity towards Marvel Cinematic Universe because it was the year that I really seriously started podcasting and have come leaps and bounds since then. Still a long way to go, but you know, every day you learn something new. That's what I always say. So what we're looking at in phase one was the first movie, Iron Man. And of the Iron Man 1, 2, and 3, has to be still one of my top 10 Marvel Cinematic movies. Now, I'm not necessarily going to rate the movies. That may be another episode. Maybe after Infinity War, we'll rate them or do something like that. You can always hit us up on Twitter at Geek Homeworld. Let us know what you think about what your favorites might be, and we might include that in our next episode. We'll see. But Iron Man pretty much kicked off the universe, and no one else could really be Iron Man but Robert Downey Jr. He was such an integral part of Iron Man, and it really rose or fell on his watch. And so that is pretty much where it all, the big bang for us in the Marvel Cinematic Universe is Iron Man from 2008. Now, a second attempt, Ang Lee, I thought, did a very good version of The Incredible Hulk, but we see a more comic book true side in his version, Hulk, which came out, I think, in 2003. And Ang Lee's got a great visual eye. Love some of the movies that he's done, especially Life of Pi. Incredibly visionary, visual movie. Just love it. So if you haven't checked that out, you need to. Let's talk about Iron Man. So Iron Man, basically, you know the story. Tony Stark, he's pretty much a billionaire, playboy, philanthropist, you know. And he kicks off Iron Man there, and he's very arrogant and he's very self-centered. And later on, we see a softening of Tony, but he's still at the core, he's still Tony Stark. And Robert Downey Jr. plays that role almost perfectly. If there were a real life Tony Stark, it would be Robert Downey Jr. He just plays that, he nails that character, and he has been the anchor of an entire franchise of 18 movies that have grossed over, and let me see, I'm looking here at my totals here. They have grossed just shy of, I mean, very shy of, but $5 billion, almost $950,000 as of the recording of this. Obviously, it's going to go over $6 billion, but the entire franchise of 18 movies, that's what they've grossed. And since we're talking about that, so we're in phase one. We're going to go through the phases real quick, and then we're going to talk about box office, where they stand, okay? So I don't know why I'm looking at my microphone and telling that. I should be looking right there at the camera. And I'm getting used to this video portion, so forgive me. And those of you listening, none of that means anything to you. So anyway, we're looking at Iron Man, came out 2008, then followed by the cameo at the end of Iron Man. You know, he was talking with, I think, or was it the end of Hulk, where he had the cameo and he said, we're putting a team together. And, well, actually, at the end of Iron Man 1, or Iron Man, you had Nick Fury, Samuel Jackson, who's just brilliant, show up, and he said, we're putting together a team. And because basically in the end, you know, Tony says, I am Iron Man, you know, and he had this prepared speech. He just threw it away and says, I'm Iron Man. And then Nick Stark shows up and tells him about the Avengers Initiative, blah, blah, blah. This is when Coulson was still alive, which is awesome. And then when the time we get to, also in 2008, The Incredible Hulk, with Hulk, Ang Lee's Hulk, or Hulk from 2003 was with Eric Bana, but this is with Edward Norton. The Incredible Hulk, and it did about the same. Both movies grossed roughly about the same, but in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I don't think they're really counting Hulk as much. Ang Lee's Hulk. But, if they put those two movies together, they could really come up with something wonderful. But we're basically seeing over the course of the Avengers movies, and started with Thor Ragnarok, which we'll get to in a little bit. But we had Thor Ragnarok, we'll have Avengers, Infinity War, and then the last Avengers movie, I believe, will complete like an arc that would have been a movie for the Hulk. So a little foreshadowing there. So with all that being said, 2008 we had Iron Man, then we had the Incredible Hulk in 2008 with Edward Norton, followed by 2 years later, didn't have anything, so we had to wait 2 years, and everybody was so hyped for Iron Man. Iron Man just really was wonderful. The Incredible Hulk, sometimes I refer to it as Hulk, but I mean to say the Incredible Hulk from 2008 with Edward Norton did a wonderful job, and I think Edward Norton did. And in the end scene, you see where the Hulk's able to control how many days he goes without transferring into the Hulk, and that's important when we get to Avengers. So we went. There was nothing in 2009 that was out, but in 2010 we got Iron Man 2, and Mickey Rourke was in it. And like a lot of sequels, even in the Marvel Universe, I have to say that not my favorite Iron Man movie. And it was okay. I mean, he was a good villain, and you can watch some trailers and other websites out there that kind of compare the movies and say, well, usually the second movie isn't the best, and in some ways that's kind of true for Iron Man 2. I would still watch it. It came out in 2010 as part of Phase 1, where they had 6 movies in Phase 1. And it was an important movie. It did okay. It did the was it Iron Man in a Bottle storyline from the comics, if I can remember correctly. Basically, a drunk Tony Stark, he's dealing with the pressures of being Iron Man, and he was freaking out a little bit here and there, and we see that later in Iron Man 3. So 2011 we get Chris Hemsworth in Thor, directed by Kenneth Branagh. Now, I did enjoy that movie. The second Thor, not the best. It just felt very formulaic. That is a word I struggle with. Formulaic. It went by a formula, okay? And then everybody's going to pick up on that and say, well, you can't say formulaic. Anyway, so you can tweet me that or give a nice comment about that if you want to here. But anyway, by the time we get to Thor, the third Thor, Ragnarok, was a total reimagining. It basically was Guardians of the Galaxy thrown in. And I know I'm getting ahead of myself. And really, if I get ahead of myself, it really doesn't matter because we're discussing the whole universe here. So, even though I'm going chronologically through Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3, if, as a side note here, I mentioned some of these other films, it's fine because it's all tied together. It's all part of the universe. And we're just talking about the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now, I will stop for a second and say, and some of you may say, well, what about Blade? Came out in, I believe, 98. Yes, they don't really consider that part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and that's a shame because the 3 Blade movies that we had, they were good. They were really good. Wesley Snipes did a wonderful job in those. There were other movies, other incarnations. If you really want to say that, well, that gets into X-Men, but the cartoon series in the 90s, and I could go off on how wonderful that series was and how pivotal that was, and that's really kind of what I think Marvel needs to focus on in their X-Men movies. And there's a point where you can leave some comments here if this makes it to YouTube, like I hope. And also you can leave some comments on YouTube or at YouTube, as I said, but also on iTunes, there with the podcast there, where it'll also be. But anyway, a lot of things going on. So we are looking at Thor. I like Thor and Kenneth Branagh, great director. Thor very much showed the mystical side of things, or and by the time we get to the second Thor, it just felt like it explored some plot points and set up some other movies. Like a lot of the second movie set up the third one, or set up a lead up to Avengers and all that. But our Thor from 2011 was a good origin story, and Loki was not supposed to make it as far as he's probably made it in these 10 years or 18 plus movie. Well, 18, it'll be 18 plus once Infinity War comes out, but the 18 movies that are part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe at this time. So, but he was such a character early on that people really just love to hate Tom Hiddleston. He's that bad guy. You can't trust Loki, and Thor always, as his brother, or actually half brother, he trusts him, and he shouldn't, but he does. And so Tom Hiddleston was a real standout from that movie, and he made that character Loki. I don't think it'd be hard to recast Loki. As a lot of these characters, it'd be hard to recast, especially if we're about to lose a lot of them in Infinity War. So that's the big fear. I think I'm predicting a lot of deaths of major characters. So we shall see how that actually all pans out. I hope, of course, not, but we don't know. So another thing we've got going on in there is you see a lot of different takes on Thor and the Rainbow Bridge. They didn't call it that. You have they go to Midgard, which is Earth. It was very fascinating. So I enjoyed the first Thor from 2011, and that was the fourth movie in Phase 1. Now, the fifth movie was Captain America: The First Avenger. And I thought about it, and I don't know if anybody else has ever touched on this fact, but Captain America, when you get into Winter Soldier and then you get to Civil War, I really think his movies got better. And one of the Chris's, I can't think of his name right now. It's not Chris Pratt. Chris Evans. Chris Pine would be in Star Trek. He would be Captain Kirk, okay? Or in Wonder Woman and possibly the sequel, Steve Trevor. So, but Chris Evans was the Human Torch back in the day, and a lot of people give a lot of grief to the portrayal, but he did a good job in being unserious as the Human Torch in Fantastic Four, and then Silver Surfer, of course, which was good, except for Galactus being a cloud. I don't even want to talk about it. It's going to make a lot of you fans out there disappointed and angry, and yeah, it let a lot of us down, but there were still good elements. But in hindsight, those movies weren't as bad as some of fans out there think, but they weren't exactly what fans wanted. But anyway, no one would have taken Chris Evans serious, I think, as Captain America, but he was so straight on, deadpan on that role of being Captain America. I think he really embodied that role. He did a wonderful job, as it were, Chris Evans, of becoming not Steve Trevor. I'm getting my universes mixed up, and but becoming Steve Rogers, Captain America. Possibly the first Captain America if he dies. Is Bucky going to take over? And the first Avenger dealt with a lot of dealing with friendships and dealing with bullies. And one of my favorite lines that I still use to this day from Captain America: The First Avenger is, "I don't like bullies." And that's what Captain America, he was bullied. And, he took this super soldier serum and became the First Avenger. And so the movie has Hugo Weaving as Red Skull, and I hope somehow they're able to bring Red Skull into Infinity War. Anything could happen when Thanos gets all of those Infinity Stones. So super excited. I once I see the movie, I know I'm going to be excited and hopefully feel like it's been 10 years of a payoff, and this is a stepping point to phases beyond this. But one thing I did read, we have phase one, phase two, phase three, and I'm not sure if I said it yet, but they may not be calling them phases, the movies beyond Infinity War. I'm not sure. So, or once we finish totally with phase three. So, um, we'll see exactly where we go from there on that. But Captain America: The First Avenger also came out the same year Thor did in 2011. So we're getting a little bit more frequency, and they're not afraid to double up. Well, in 2008 we had Iron Man and Incredible Hulk, and then 2009 nothing. Then 2010 we had just Iron Man 2, and then Thor in 2011. So along with Captain America: The First Avenger in 2011. So they finally got it together, and it was leading up to the Chitauri attacking in 2012, Marvel's The Avengers. That's the appropriate name, but people call it Avengers, The Avengers, whatever. But big box office smash. It was released May 4th of 2012, and just until recently, until this year, the box office was surpassed by Black Panther, which is still in theaters at the time of this, and I think it's actually on its way, almost out. It came out in February, it's only April 20th, so it's almost, March, April. So really 2 months it's been out, but it's grossed over $675 million domestic. So it's the biggest dollar gross for movies made in the U.S. or domestic box office. For domestic box office is what I'm trying to say. It is Black Panther is the biggest superhero movie of all time and the biggest in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or MCU. And for me, though, Marvel's The Avengers from 2012, the sixth and final movie in phase one, for me, it's still one of the best movies. It's kind of like the first big bang of movies. The idea of, well, Iron Man was the big bang for this universe, but the Avengers bringing all these characters together, it still is a good movie. It feels a little dated, like all movies do, but honestly, 2012 doesn't seem that long ago when that came out, but it did very well. So Marvel's The Avengers, still my favorite in the Marvel Universe. Yes, I liked it more than Black Panther. Is Black Panther an excellent movie? Yes. Black Panther is up there with The Dark Knight and up there with Logan. Not as good in the sense that, and this is where comments may go a little crazy. I'm not dissing Black Panther. I know people have seen this thing multitude of times. I've only actually seen it, I think, once or twice maybe. And that's not because I didn't like the movie. I thought the movie was exceptional. I was excited for it. I did not know it would do this well. I thought it would do well. I was thinking it would peak out around 500 million domestic. It just kept going. Black Panther is such a monumental movie, and for people of color to see those strong characters, those positive characters, even one of the best villains ever in Black Panther. Also, there's so many things about Black Panther that I'm not trying to take away from. Believe me, I love the movie. It's a great movie. But when I think of movies that transcended superhero movies, I don't think Black Panther did that enough, even though it was a cultural phenomenon, and I can get the historical significance of how important this movie is. Kind of like when Wonder Woman from DC, when it did so well, and basically now Wonder Woman's the anchor of whatever universe that's fallen apart over there at DC, and hopefully they're going to get their act together. But Wonder Woman was such a triumph, and if you listen to the podcast, you'll hear a lot of earlier episodes where I'm really pushing for people to get behind Wonder Woman because it had a female director, and it was more than just a superhero movie. But as much as I loved Wonder Woman on my second and third watchings of that movie, it didn't hold up as well. I found a lot of plot holes. I actually found and I kind of thought this to tie it in with Captain America: The First Avenger. It had a lot of similarities. There was, you know, Cap's little group of guys, and Wonder Woman had the same little group, or actually Steve Trevor did, and there are a lot of parallels, different wars, but I don't know. I don't want to take away from Captain America, from Black Panther, or certainly from Wonder Woman, but in the very important movies, Black Panther, I can't say how important that movie is, and it's phenomenal. It is just phenomenal. It's just wonderful. But for me, The Dark Knight is so what Christopher Nolan did there. So many movies that have come after have tried to follow that formula. Logan was basically a western. It just happened to have superhero elements. That's how they made Logan, and that's why Logan is so powerful. And I want to see. I hope Infinity War is that way. I doubt it though. I really doubt it though, because I think it's going to stay within that superhero context, and that's fine. And I'm not saying it has to, and I'm not saying it's a terrible movie or a bad movie because it stays within the confines of superhero movies. But if you're really looking to get a wider audience than just and these movies are getting great audiences like Black Panther and Infinity War will and all that, and I'm not taking away from them. But if you want to go to that next level of movie making and transcend just the genre of superhero movies like Logan are what you need to look at. What was done in the sound design and in just the story, and obviously Heath Ledger's performance. Christian Bale was a wonderful Batman. There's a lot that can be learned from that. So DC has a few things Wonder Woman they got right, so they got a few things that they did really well. And but if you're going to transcend the medium, you need to be. I'm not saying be like Dark Knight or be like Logan, but it doesn't hurt to think outside the box that way. And Black Panther really does do that, and it's just so close for me. But this isn't a diss on Black Panther, so please don't take it that way. But anyway, so Captain America, all that from Captain America: The First Avengers in 2011, and then Marvel's The Avengers in 2012. So we got our first team up in 2012, and that ended Phase 1. So now we move on to Phase 2, and probably I hated this movie at the time it came out. I liked it, but I hated it. And it got the Avengers bump, or multiplier, as you may hear it called. And some of the movies get that, like Captain America: The First Avengers was leading up to the Avengers from 2011 to 2012, so we got a little bit of a bump there. I want to say this, and I can't remember if I said this. I'm a little nervous trying to do this audio video thing here, so please forgive me for that if I'm a little awkward here. But it seemed Captain America, every movie had more than one hero in it, especially when we get to Winter Soldier and Civil War, and a lot of them led up to big movies, so that was another thing. But when we get into Phase 2, we start with Iron Man 3, and this movie that came out in 2013 really upset me in a way, because I thought it was brilliant. It was kind of like what The Last Jedi did, but maybe not as much. I don't know, but they took the Mandarin and they started the movie. The Mandarin was so intimidating and scary in political times, how things were, and it fit in really well. And I thought that this is going to be phenomenal. And Iron Man 3 is just basically about Iron Man having a breakdown. What happened in New York with the Avengers and the Chitauri, and it just took him to another level. And this is the anxiety that Tony Stark carries with him throughout to Age of Ultron, which happens in 2015, when 2 years later, when well, maybe it was made 2 years later, but timeline's a little different. But when we get to Avengers Age of Ultron a little bit later, you're seeing that anxiety that Tony Stark was. He's trying to put a shield around the world, and we'll talk about that in a second. But our first movie out of Phase 2 is Iron Man 3 from 2013, and that is. It took such a turn, and Ben Kingsley, brilliant actor. No problems with his acting, just a problem with the storyline. I mean, they basically he wasn't the main villain at all. He was just a actor, and the gentleman who was. It dealt with extremists um, storyline from the comics, which was okay. But Iron Man 3, probably my least favorite on first watching. When I've seen it again, there are things about it I find that I like. And it's very hard for me to dislike a film. It's really hard, very difficult for me to dislike a film because I have to look and find out where it is that I might not like this, I might not like that, and I can pick apart Iron Man 3 easier than most films. And Iron Man 2 a little bit forgettable in the past. If you go back, it just felt like a kind of a rehash. Kind of felt like some of the Marvel movies felt that way. They don't hold up as well as I'd like them to. But Iron Man 3 in 2013, I should say, it did what Rian Johnson did in Star Wars: The Last Jedi, and took so many left turns that, well, Last Jedi really took some left turns. And I won't even go into that in this episode because this is going to be a very long episode if we're going to get through this. So, but anyway, Iron Man 3, not my favorite. Iron Man 1, my favorite of the 3 Iron Man movies so far. Now, Thor: Dark World came out also in 2013, and it had that ether, which is one of the Infinity Stones. So, I don't know. I never really bought the whole relationship with him and Jane, and basically I, nothing against the actress there, but I never really believed that relationship that much for Thor and Jane, and just felt kind of disposable. Thor: The Dark World, if Thor Ragnarok happened to be, or the third Thor movie was in line with how dark the Dark World was, then it wouldn't have done as well as it did. Of course, it took a picture out of the playbook of Guardians of the Galaxy, and that came out in 2014. So anyway, Thor: The Dark World, okay film. I'll watch it, but it's not my favorite. Probably my least favorite of the Thor movies. Now, the third movie in Phase 2 was Captain America: The Winter Soldier, and probably until Black Panther, and excluding Marvel's The Avengers from 2012, to me and to a lot of people, The Winter Soldier, which really it was all about Bucky, but it's Captain America standing by his principles and standing by his best friend, who apparently almost did a snap of the finger. You could turn him bad and brainwash him and all that. Which that's after Black Panther, we see in that extra credit scene at the end, one of them, we see that Winter Soldier's coming back, and he'll be there for Infinity War, and he'll probably be there for a while. He may turn out to be the next Captain America in the comics, or they may do that with the other character that took over. There are several different characters that took over. But Captain America: The Winter Soldier was just about as perfect a movie at the time, and still holds up. Very strong movie, very, very intense action. It was, for me, one of the best non-Bond films. It just felt very, it felt very visceral, kind of like Daniel Craig's Bond movies are. And you can comment about that if you'd like. And it just was done so well. And Chris Evans was owning the role at this point, the Winter Soldier. And this movie just solidified him even more as Captain America. And that was from 2014. And I could go on and on about Winter Soldier, but we had Scarlett Johansson has still not got her due in getting a solo film, and I think with the rise of more females getting in front of the camera, behind the camera, which is awesome. I think we're going to see a Black Widow movie. But Black Widow and Sam, who was, oh gosh, what's his name? I almost said Arrow. I can't think of his name. I'm going to click here real quick. So bear with me. Because we had Sebastian Stan playing Bucky Barnes, and I've got to figure out who am I looking for? Oh my gosh, what's his name? This is embarrassing, actually. We had Baron von Strucker in it, obviously. Let's see. Oh my gosh, Sam Wilson, Falcon, and so I'm just checking out blah 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 blah. Just some notes I have here. But anyway, so he just comes across him, and that's just how it happens in the movie there. And I love everything about Winter Soldier. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little off track there, but it just seemed like every Captain America movie, like when we get to Civil War, it was almost an Avengers movie. So it's like Avengers 2.5. This was probably Avengers 2.5, what I call Winter Soldier. And then we get the first thing that changes the universe. Marvel was feeling pretty confident on this one. The fourth film, and this was also released in 2014, but the fourth film in Phase 2 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe was Guardians of the Galaxy from 2014. And this changed a lot of things because this is a pivotal movie in the entire MCU, because what it did, it brought in Chris Pratt. Too many Chris's. Guardians of the Galaxy brought in humor. I mean, we had it in Tony Stark, Iron Man, different things, and even Thor a little bit. Definitely had it by the time we got to Ragnarok. It was almost a comedy, but it still worked. But anyway, Guardians of the Galaxy from 2014, the fourth film in Phase 2 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, changed things because it took this unknown comic from way back in the day. Characters, I mean, a talking tree, I am Groot, Groot, and then Rocket Raccoon, and it just was, it worked. And it used this old 70s music from the mixtapes, and they were popular and all that. It was so interesting in a totally different direction, and it influenced almost directly Thor Ragnarok. So Thor Ragnarok definitely, from Guardians and Guardians 2, it definitely changed this whole vibe up, and it worked for Thor. And who knew Thor was that funny, because he played it. Chris Hemsworth played the role more serious. And but Guardians of the Galaxy was fun. Volume 2 felt to me a bit of a retread, even though I love the Kurt Russell character of Ego the Living Planet, basically his father, Star-Lord's father. But, we get that I'm Star-Lord man from Guardians of the Galaxy. So many good memories. And that was from 2014. Now, it led up to, and it did very well at the box office. And then we get the very next year, Avengers Age of Ultron. So 3 years after Marvel's The Avengers, we get Age of Ultron. Now, it was a bit of a disappointment. It did over $1 billion or whatever at the box office internationally and everything, but it only did about $459 million versus the 623. So Disney was like freaking out. People were freaking out and saying Age of Ultron is a letdown. It's, not that good, and they expected to just double it. Well, they're going to double all of that, I think, with Infinity War. But I enjoyed Age of Ultron, and it was so many good things about it. I thought it was well paced. It was a good movie. It was a solid movie, and it was our second team up of the heroes, and we got Quicksilver, who died in it, supposedly. Will he come back? We don't know. For Infinity War, anything can happen with these Infinity Stones. So, it can just be gone like that. So, whatever Thanos decides is best. So, But looking at that, Guardians of the Galaxy was such a game changer. Just like Deadpool was a game changer in Logan couldn't have been R rated had not and done the proper service by being R rated like it was without Deadpool. So Ryan Reynolds got to redeem himself from Green Lantern and all that, and a lot of people upset there. But he went from that, and by the time we get over to this universe, he had totally had saved himself there. So um, very very interesting. I've lost my train of thought. Okay, I'm being honest with you there. But Guardians of the Galaxy we have from 2014 there. The fifth movie in Phase Two, we talked about Age of Ultron. Yeah, I was talking about Quicksilver. Okay, in Age of Ultron, but it just worked, and there were just some great cinematic moments. Then in 2015 we had another movie, and in Phase Two, the sixth movie in that phase, Ant-Man, and that brought some straight up comedy in. And it was probably, when you stack them all up, it was one of the weaker movies. It didn't overperform, but it didn't do terrible. I mean, it did well, good enough. And Ant-Man plays a very pivotal role in Civil War, and so you know, I enjoyed it. It's a fun movie. Ant-Man and the Wasp. Part of it was filmed in my hometown here, so um, of course excited for that. Always excited for that, but I'm excited because it's a Marvel movie and it's going to be fun. And in Ant-Man and the Wasp, I think adding that extra character, having the Wasp in there, even though the Wasp in the cartoons and all the Marvel cartoons just really irritated me. I don't know what it was about the character, but it was just it's not one of my the Wasp is not one of my favorite characters. But I think I'm going to feel different about the big screen version of the Wasp, and I think it's going to work out well. So Ant-Man and the Wasp, I'm excited for too. But Ant-Man came out in 2015. It closed out phase two of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now we get to another Captain America movie 2 years later. How do you follow up The Winter Soldier but with, coming straight out of the comics, Captain America Civil War, first movie in phase three? And I really thought going in they were going to follow the comics and Captain America was going to die. Maybe Bucky was going to take over. Um, who knows who would have taken over at that point, but it didn't happen. And so I was very kind of relieved, but it was such a schism that was put between Iron Man and Captain America. And Captain America was still saving his buddy Bucky, and we find out Bucky killed, when he was mind controlled, killed Tony Stark's parents, which Howard Stark and all that. And in between all this, we had Agent Carter back in the day, and we see that. And so it was very, very, very awesome movie. And Civil War is one of my favorites, probably in my top five. I'd have to look at it and see. And it kicked off phase three in 2016, so not that long ago. Then we get into our second movie of phase three from 2016, also Doctor Strange and Benedict Cumberbatch, who's in Star Trek Into Darkness was a great villain, but not a great Khan. And they totally flipped script and made him justified. Khan was totally justified Into Darkness, but still enjoyed that Star Trek movie. But anyway, Benedict Cumberbatch, awesome actor, very awesome. Doctor Strange, he's got one of the Infinity Stones. He's rocking that Time Stone there, and very trippy kind of movie. I feel like this movie could have been done in like the 70s. You could throw on some Pink Floyd and chill out and watch Doctor Strange and just really probably trip out on it. But it's very movie talking about metaphysicality and just alternate dimensions, astral plane, stuff like that. So it added, finally, the mystical arts were added to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which are going to be very important. in Infinity War, and Doctor Strange is going to be probably one of those characters that's going. I imagine is going to continue on beyond Infinity War, and I enjoyed the movie. I thought it was good. I've seen it several times, theater and on TV and everything else or wherever. And that was number 2. Now number 3, we followed up with okay, we got to do a sequel, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, and it came out 3 years after Guardians of the Galaxy, and it, to me, honestly, it was a good movie. It wasn't one of my top movies last year. And if you listen to the podcast, you'll hear what I thought some of the top movies of 2017 were. And Guardians was not one of my favorites. It wasn't the favorite, certainly, but you'd have to find that episode and listen. Okay, so there's some homework for you. Okay, check it out on the podcast. But when I'm thinking about it, I mean, it was a fun movie. I love the opening sequence. Of course, when we went to go see it in 3D, and at the time it was called the Big D, before, when it was Carmike Cinemas, our local cinemas in the Big D, before it became AMC, and it was I think we saw the opening about 5 to 6 times because it was all, the colors were wrong and they couldn't get the 3D right, and so we kept seeing Groot in that whole sequence, and we finally saw it. And the previews were all like pink and purple and trippy looking, and like Doctor Strange did some work on it. I don't know, but I don't know. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 was fun. I enjoyed, like I said, Ego the Living Planet. Mark was great in that role as Ego the Living Planet, and the whole storyline was okay, but it for me, it didn't break new ground. You may disagree with me, but I guess the impact of Guardians of the Galaxy felt so new and so fresh. By the time we got to the second sequel, it just felt obligatory. It just felt like, yeah, this has to happen. So I don't know. But also, we get 2 more movies in Phase 3 that came out in 2017. So 2017 was a big year. You know, there was the Sony hack, and we found out before that they were behind the scenes and getting the rights to Spider-Man, and Spider-Man was in Civil War, obviously, so it was a little bit before that. But the Civil War came out in 2016. But we get to see Spider-Man: Homecoming, and Michael Keaton, who played Batman, 1989 Tim Burton Batman, and also the follow-up to that, brilliant as the Vulture. He made a great villain, and his story seemed very justified. He plays an incredible villain. As great of a superhero as Michael Keaton was in Batman, he was every bit as good, or at least very good, as the Vulture in Spider-Man: Homecoming. And yes, it did bar a little bit, and thank you for not letting it be an origin story. We've seen enough. I'm a big fan of Tobey Maguire. I think Tobey Maguire was I don't know. At first I said Tobey Maguire was a better Peter Parker, but when I think about it, Peter Parker in Spider-Man: Homecoming, I think they finally got it right. He's the right age, and he's got the right attitude for it. So I love Spider-Man: Homecoming. I thought it was very well. We have a couple episodes, spoiler free, and then one where we just pretty much break down the movie in a good possible way. And so you should check that out on the podcast, geekhomeworld.libsyn.com. And Spider-Man: Homecoming was just in 2017 was really a welcomed addition. Now there was no Uncle Ben in it. That upset me. Marisa Tomei was his aunt, who Aunt May had never looked that young and that attractive and all that. But so it's a different Aunt May, but that's fine. I mean, I love the lady that played Aunt May in the Tobey Maguire trilogy of Spider-Man movies. I really think she nailed the role. And anyway, I just realized it's a different generation. You know, times moved on. You gotta evolve with the times and look at things when they came out in the time period that they came out, and appreciate them for what was going on in that time period, and the mistakes that were made and the things that were right that may not be so right now, So you got to look at that. You got to put things in the context of the time that they were created, conceived of, and everything. And Spider-Man: Homecoming, I think we have an episode called Spider-Man: Home Run because I like to do the play on words there, and it was a home run. They did a very good job in Spider-Man: Homecoming from 2017. Now the third movie in that year that came out, and the fifth movie overall from Phase 3 was Thor Ragnarok, and they basically took the Thor formula of the first two movies, threw it up in the air, and said, "Okay, out with that." We got Immigrant Song here from Led Zeppelin, which actually worked very perfectly in there. And the way it was done, we got a World War Hulk beginning of that story arc, because at the end of Age of Ultron, he goes away. And so then we find out he's been the Hulk for 3 years on this, warring planet there. And anyway, Thor loses his hammer, loses his hair. Well, not loses his hair, gets cut and all that. I think by Stan Lee, if I remember correctly from the cameo. But it's just a totally trippy kind of Doctor Strange, Guardian-ish. I always say it's got the influence of Guardians of the Galaxy. It used music in such a way to market the film, and it was just a wonderful breath of fresh air blown into that Thor trilogy of movies. I mean, where the first two, the second one, The Lost World, the second one was just formulaic to me. Or formulaic, there's that word again. Ragnarok rewrote the script on Thor, different director, totally different direction. Some people complained a little bit too much comedy. That's fair enough to say, but I did enjoy it, and I could definitely see that again. Then we go to the last movie of Phase 3, which is now the top grossing comic book movie, superhero movie of all time for domestic box office, and I think beyond that too, maybe international. Black Panther came out in 2018, February 16th, right around Valentine's Day. So what a present that was. I had high hopes and anticipation for this movie, and I thoroughly enjoyed Black Panther. And to see so many people go out and support this movie and how important this movie is to people of color, of course I can't understand that. Truly, to see that representation on the big screen, and not just in front of the camera but behind it. But I do get it. I understand the relevance of it. Like I said on the previous podcast, Black Panther was more than just a superhero movie, more than a movie. It was a movement. I think it's changed a lot of things. So Marvel has these movies. They have a few that you can say, oh, they're just kind of going through the motions, kind of. But they have some movies that really change things. And from a perspective beyond the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it's changed the universe, I promise you. And that's a good thing. That is a great thing. And I can't say enough great things about Black Panther. I can't say it's my favorite Marvel's movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but it's doggone close. It's like very, very close. It might be sharing the favorite, but Black Panther, runaway success, and obviously greenlit for sequels. And Black Panther is going to be one of the most important figures. I don't see him dying in Infinity War. I don't see that happening even in the fourth Avengers, bringing everybody together kind of movie. Now, let's talk about that, because after Black Panther, which is the 18th movie, the latest one, it came out in 2018, and now we're going to see number 19 is going to be the biggest of all time in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and that's going to be Infinity War. I really think it's going to be hard to top Black Panther, but I think Black Panther, and this is what's great, and someone's already said this before, but they'll say, I read something and they said that Black Panther's Infinity War is going to be good because of Black Panther. Well, that's true. That's true. and I hope that Avengers bump that it gets, leading into Avengers and the pool of Black Panther fans in, and I'm a Black Panther fan. Don't get me wrong. I I just think it's wonderful, and the fact that we're gonna get Black Panther and we're gonna get all the heroes they can stuff in a movie, and I'm pretty sure it's going to work. Fingers crossed there, but I'm pretty sure it's going to work out really well. And I think Infinity War, I think there are going to be some deaths, and that's our 19th movie. And so that pretty much, I guess, closes out the three phases. So let's look at box office, and I'm going to start at the bottom here, and I'm going to work my way up to from number 18 to number 1, and I'm not counting Infinity Wars because it's not out yet as the recording of this on April 20th. And when we look at it, we're seeing the movies and how they did just domestic box office. Okay, so the average movie comes in at about 330 million when you average all of them out. That's pretty impressive for films in this cinematic universe. Now, the least box, and this is box office wise, from number 18 at about 134 million is The Incredible Hulk with Edward Norton back from 2008. So one of the least performing to date film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and for legal reasons, and probably because I don't know, they'd have to. Well, they kind of reinvented Hulk and Ragnarok, so I'm glad that they put that in there. You'll see another part of this trilogy that started in Thor Ragnarok with Thor versus Hulk, and you're going to see basically a movie inside of Ragnarok, which we've seen, Infinity War, and next Avengers movie, or the next movie to follow Infinity War. So we're supposed to get a 3-story kind of arc here, and apparently the strongest there is, Hulk, has some issues with Thanos, so I think Thanos gives him a run for his money, and it's going to be just incredible to see where we go. So in 18th place we have at 134 million, and I'm just rounding it, is The Incredible Hulk with Edward Norton, that version from 2008. Number 17 is Captain America the First Avenger with 176 million. Then we have Ant-Man from 2015 with 180 million. Just nudging it out from 2011 is Thor, and at 181 million. Then right above that at 206 million, finally broke the 200 million mark, from 2013 is Thor the Dark World. Number 13 is at 232 million from 2016 is Doctor Strange. Then Captain America Winter Soldier is number 12 on the list with 259 million. That came out in 2014. We have Iron Man 2 at the number 11 spot, domestic box office, with 312 million from its release date back in 2010. And then we get into the top 10 Marvel movies, not counting Infinity War, because it's not out yet at this time. Thor Ragnarok did better, so all three Thor movies got better with each sequel. This one did tremendously better than the two before it. The same can be said for Captain America, First Avenger, Winter Soldier, and then Civil War, which is coming up on this list. They all, and the last two in both of these did dramatically better. 206 million for Thor: The Dark World, back there at number 14, but at number 10 at 315 million is from 2017 is Thor Ragnarok at number 10. So the 9th biggest domestic box office movie of the Marvel Cinematic Universe is the original Iron Man movie from 2008 at 318 million. Number 8 is Guardians of the Galaxy from 2014 with 333 million. Edging it out from 2017 at number 7 is Guardians of the Galaxy with 330. Number 8, Guardians of the Galaxy at 333 million. from 2014. Number 7, just $1 million more, Spider-Man: Homecoming from 2017 with 334 million domestic box office. Number 6 was Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 from 2017 with 389 million. So those are, let's see, that actually, yeah, so that did better than Guardians. So Guardians 2 got better. So Marvel's improving on their movies in their, sequels to their individual character movies. So Guardians was number 6, Volume 2, number 6 from 2017. It was number 6 with 389 million. Then we jump into our top 5 are in the 400 million plus category. So we have Captain America: Civil War, still one of the best Marvel movies in the universe. Very much in my top 3, I guess. But Captain America: Civil War, number 5 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe overall from 2016. It did 408 million. Now, just a million, it was $1 million shy of tying, or $2 million shy of beating the number 4 movie, which was Iron Man 3 that came out in 2013. Now, if you look back and we talk about that Avengers bump, as it's been called, or multiplier, when you get Iron Man 3, it was the first movie of Phase 2 in 2013. It was the first follow-up to Marvel's The Avengers in 2012. So it had that multiplier. It got that big bump at the box office, and it did a tremendous amount of box office, 409 million at the time. That was, I think, the second biggest of the franchise, roughly speaking. Then we get into the top 3, and there's really no surprise here. From 2015, we have Avengers: Age of Ultron with 459 million domestic box office. Number 2, still my favorite, Marvel's The Avengers from 2012, the first team-up movie with 623 million. And then, as we said before, number 1 in the Marvel Cinematic Universe of 18 movies, not counting number 19, which is Infinity War, we have it's 675 million from February of 2018 release date, Black Panther with Chadwick Boseman and the wonderful cast and brilliant screenwriting on that movie. One of the best Marvel movies. So that is your box office wise. So yeah, box office is one thing. Box office doesn't always tell quality. There are a lot of movies that didn't make a lot of money that maybe a lot of people didn't see that are really exceptional. But if we're going by the numbers there. So if you want to, and I'm looking at Box Office Mojo here on this for the some of these numbers for box office, and I see that the Avengers, when you adjust for inflation, for price inflation, it is actually 705 domestic versus the 675. So it's still technically, if you count inflation, it's still ahead of that. So, but overall, for what they really count is the gross that the movie made. So Black Panther is far and wide at 675 million, the number 1 movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now, I hope to see Infinity War top that. Nothing against Black Panther at all, nothing against that movie, but with the inclusion of Black Panther in Infinity War, I don't see a reason why it can't be, and I'm sure this movie is what it's all been building up to. So, what are the upcoming releases as we kind of close out this episode here? A little bit longer, and I apologize for this being a longer audio episode, and hopefully this all works out as a video episode too on YouTube. Otherwise, everything I said in the audio podcast or whatever won't make any sense, but bear with me here. Here's some release dates that I want to just throw at you here of upcoming releases in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We have Infinity War coming out in 7 days, April 27th, 2018. Ant-Man and the Wasp, which is partly filmed, a small part in my hometown, comes out July 6th, right after Independence Day, which I wouldn't be surprised if they push it back a little bit, get some of that Independence Day crowd, which it will, but it's coming out July 6th of 2018. Captain Marvel, which is going to be female Brie Larson there. That's going to be, I think, a big movie coming out March 8th. So we don't have too long between that of 2019. Then there's an Untitled Adventures movie coming out May 3rd of 2019. That is essentially the follow-up to Infinity War. Infinity War was going to be part 1 and part 2, but now they're going to wrap it up, and the tagline is, where will you be for Infinity War? Where will you be when it all ends? And so I think they're really using this to close a chapter of this book, and then maybe there may be studio heads changing. There may be not studio heads, I don't know about that, but people in charge of this universe, overseeing this universe, that may go other places. There may, this is a good stepping off point for maybe some of our major characters. So, Black Panther's definitely, I don't see a reason why that Black Panther won't continue. I would guarantee that Black Panther's going to continue on. Chadwick Boseman's got a good career in that. If they can keep making the movies as good as Black Panther was, they've got nothing to worry about. He definitely doesn't, in the whole crew. But May 3rd, 2019, we'll get an Untitled Avengers movie, which is the follow-up to Infinity War. Spider-Man Homecoming 2 is not coming out until July 5th of 2019. Then we have an Untitled Marvel movie, and these are all subject to change from this point on, pretty much. May 1st of 2020. Another Untitled Marvel movie, July 31st of 2020. Another Untitled Marvel movie, November 6th, 2020. They've basically reserved all these dates, and they'll tell us what those movies are. Then we have an Untitled Marvel 1 movie, May 7th, 2021. This is all according to boxofficemojo.com. Then Untitled Marvel 2 movie, July 30th, 2021. Untitled Marvel 3 movie, November 5th, 2021. Untitled Marvel 1 movie for February 18th, 2022. Untitled Marvel 2 movie for May 6th, 2022. And Untitled Marvel 3 movie on July 29th, 2022. So they've got stuff planned out to 2022. So that'll be interesting to see. Well, anyway, this has been a long episode of the podcast, Geek Homeworld. Please check us out on our website at geekhomeworld.libsyn.com. You can follow our blog at geekhomeworld.blogspot.com, and always give us your feedback at Geek Homeworld on Twitter. So you can also listen to our podcast, the audio podcast, on iTunes podcasts there, Geek Homeworld. And please go over to the YouTube channel, and hopefully this video turns out well, and you forgive me for the crudeness of it. Hopefully it turned out really well, and we'll improve over time. So trying to get my lighting straight. You should see the setup I got here. It's ridiculous, but hopefully the sound turns out good. Hopefully everything's in sync. We'll find out. But anyway, I want you to please go and hit that subscribe button if you could. We'd thank you. Thank you very much for that on YouTube, Geek Homeworld. And let us know your thoughts there, your comments. Please be kind. Okay. Well, this is Savage Tech Man, aka Ed, saying thank you very much. Thank you, Marvel. Thank you, Disney, Marvel. Thank you, all the people behind the scenes, all the crews of all these 18 films, 19 if you count Infinity War. Thank you for all that you've done to bring these characters in Marvel, these superheroes, to the big screen, for people of my age and for this new generation and the next generation that are going to see all these characters. Thank you for all that you've done to make this an exciting universe and to show everyone how it's done. And not to knock DC, but I know DC desperately wants to follow this path. There are some great DC heroes, and I want to see them treated the right way on screen. And I'm not going to talk about Justice League now. Where's that Snyder Cut? Hashtag Snyder Cut. We need the Snyder Cut of Justice League. And but anyway, there's a lot of exciting movies coming up. We talk more And if you're watching here on the YouTube stream, I've got just a screenshot of our last episode, which is episode 90, A Quiet Horror, and it's basically a review of A Quiet Place, which is an exceptional horror movie that will surprise you very much. One of my favorite movies is Signs by M. Night Shyamalan, and the fact that it has suspense, that movie has it for you. So if you haven't checked that movie out, you need to check it out. We're going to be reviewing a lot of movies like we do here. You're going to find out a lot of fun stuff here, and hopefully I'll be able to do some live streaming, some chats here on the YouTube channel, and figure it all out. I'm still working through the technology, so hopefully you're there at the beginning of all this, the video part of it. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I've had fun, and I hope this hasn't been a bad experience for you. I hope it's been a good experience. So once again, I'm rambling on. I would edit some of this out, but since it's on video, I'm not, and I'm going to leave it in the podcast as is. So you'll hear the same audio in the audio podcast, especially if this all goes bad. So hopefully this video works out and I didn't waste my time. So I'm Ed, aka Savage Techman. Thank you for watching or listening at, oops, I'm trying to point here, at Geek Homeworld. See right there? It's on the screen. Geek Homeworld over there. Okay. Anyway, thank you very much, and please hit that subscribe button on YouTube, and we'll see you. Thank you so much. Bye.